Next, we're speaking with two mayors and a tech expert about building innovation and technology into the DNA of cities. Steve Adler is mayor of Austin, Texas, one of the top digital cities in the world. Nan Whaley is mayor of Dayton, Ohio, a city that is driven by aerospace technology. That's where Orville and Wilbur Wright, did their manufacturing and all sorts of other advanced manufacturing industry. And we also have Molly Turner, a leading expert on technology, startups, and cities from Berkeley's Haas School of Business and host of a really cool podcast, the Technopolis podcast. It's great to see all of you. Let me start with Steve Adler. I've got history with Steve, so we've talked about this before. I think like Representative Rochester said, a lot of people had the training, the orientation, the way they were going to, come online, squeeze from 3 months to a couple of weeks. I know that mayors have playbooks and dashboards for what they want to achieve in their cities. What has the pandemic done? We'll go first to Steve in Austin and then to Nan Whaley in Dayton. What has it done to compress your schedule of what you had to achieve to both stay a smart city but deal with the gut punch we've all taken?
Well, I tell you, it accelerated the schedule from something that could take a half year or a year, or was interesting things to sit around a table and talk about, to suddenly needing delivery within days. You're talking about a situation here that no one really anticipated, no one really knew anything about. It was real clear pretty early that we were having huge numbers in our city not working, huge numbers not able to pay rent, huge numbers not being able to feed themselves and their family. So necessity and the mother of invention. Businesses immediately trying to figure out how they could work remotely. But it also created huge opportunities for people that were smart and clever in terms of anticipating what it would take to make things work. Technologies have evolved. My activity on Zoom was pretty limited. And when I think about what this experience was like when we first started doing it back in March compared to the technologies today, everywhere you turn, there are new technologies, new ways of doing things, new ways of people being able to engage in ideas. New needs. We're trying to find right now the technology extension for maintaining live music in the city and finding alternate ways for the industry to work, dealing with populations of people experiencing homelessness. So it created huge opportunities, I think, from the government's perspective. As with all things innovation, it's our job to try to maximize the comfort for people being able to take risks. The more risks people feel comfortable taking, the greater the innovation that you're going to see. Part of that's cultural, I think. Austin kind of tracks risk takers and early adopters. But a lot of what the cities do is just trying to make sure that risk tolerance level stays real high.
Thank you, Stephen. And Mayor Whaley, when you're basically, I'll ask you the same thing about Dayton, and I should also say in the backdrop that you're very active in the Conference of Mayors, one of my favorite organizations in the country. It's so great to meet mayors. They have executive leadership roles. They all have different playbooks. But what's been compressed for you, and how has your priority list changed during this time?
Well, I'm glad you love mayors. I think they're the best elected officials anywhere. But, I think Steve and I are a little biased in that. So it's nice to hear it from a non-biased source. But thank you for bringing up this issue. For us in Dayton, in addition to what Mayor Adler said about really, this giving people the space to take risk, we had to really speed up our efforts around access to broadband in whole neighborhoods where both telehealth and education services weren't available. The delivery system for thousands of children that usually get their food from school now served at home during this pandemic. So thinking of services more in a delivery set and our infrastructure, I think, really made us speed this effort along. And at the same time, what's been interesting to me during the pandemic in Dayton, we went through the Great Recession in 2008, which was one of I think Dayton, probably next to Detroit, had the most difficult time with the Great Recession. But this time it's been, first, very unequal on how people are experiencing it. And then secondly, it's been amazing to see that the building and the interest, is still going strong. And I think that's what is surprising to us, as we are busier than ever with plan board and busier than ever on building permits, yet we're still having to deal with a large section of our community that's unemployed or doesn't get the services that they need. And then retail that has been incredibly disrupted. And I think you want to talk about a place that's, seeing their timeline incredibly shortened. It's in our retail and small business industry, which is a really big concern for mayors across the country.
Nan, before I jump to Molly, I want to ask you something that's a little bit more on the human side, because I'm glad you talked about the people that are still unemployed. I remember the 08-09 financial crisis and how that was a real hard hit for families. They lost savings, they lost homes, they lost jobs. But yet when they did that, they carried the stigma, not the banks, not the people with the credit default swaps, not the other end of this. Do you worry that we're going to have, as we talk about how quickly the economy is bouncing back, there's a permanent rupture in the economy for a lot of folks, and I worry about them getting blamed in this time. What do you think our approach, our thinking, the sort of support that these folks need to have that may not be able to bounce back with whatever's coming next?
Well, I think that's a great question, and something that we can learn from the Great Recession, right? We saw these efforts and these blames taking place both around foreclosures, loss of job, loss of income over that period of time. And so let's not make the same mistakes again in what is this COVID recession, right? So I am pleased, we would like another stimulus package, because I think this fourth quarter is going to be incredibly difficult with the credit crunch that's coming for small businesses. And my small businesses that I talk to, in like not Washington, D.C. terms, which is small business 500 and smaller, I think of small businesses 50 and smaller. So those small businesses are hanging on by their fingernails. And I don't see how they get through fourth quarter without real investment from the federal government. So that, I think, is really, really important if we're talking about how to keep this moving. And we have had success because of the investment of unemployment plus up, of PPP, of making sure that we can get rental assistance to our folks so they don't have to, be displaced, lose their house, or be with somebody else. So let's learn from what we didn't do in 08 and 09 and do it right this time. And sadly, I'm not seeing that out of Washington, D.C. right now.
We're always a little bit of a lag here, unfortunately. Molly Turner, the other day I talked with Aman Bhutani. Aman is the CEO of GoDaddy, and they have this fascinating data set in something called Venture Forward of looking at all these micro businesses and micro ventures that are popping up. He says some of them are side hustles, and sometimes those side hustles become the primary, jobs for folks as they struggle in these times. So there's this whole array of innovation out there that is not often on the radar screen of policymakers. But there's the other side, that some environments are better than other environments for startups and for creating that economic vitality. What can you share with us about the era of COVID and how, like Steve Adler City, one of the smartest cities in the world, how can communities aspire to become rich ecosystems for the sort of startups you're expert in?
Well, so there's a lot of, I think, aspirational hope right now that the big superstar cities like New York and San Francisco that have the largest share of tech workers are just emptying out, because these tech workers can now work remotely. They're going to move to cities and rural areas all over the country and the world. And there's going to be a huge distribution of the tech workforce and these kinds of entrepreneurs across the country. Well, that's really just not happening. The data does not support that. In fact, most workers who are moving out of New York and San Francisco, it's a very small percentage of them. Most people are actually staying in their cities right now. There are fewer moves than there were last year. However, the workers that are moving out of the big cities like New York and San Francisco are moving to other big cities, like from San Francisco to Austin. So we might actually see a greater distribution of these tech jobs to other cities across the country, which is really great, because that will bring these forms of entrepreneurship and the benefits of the tech industry to more cities across the country. They won't all be kind of concentrated in just a handful of superstar cities.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, when you think about the superstar cities not going on, so you're saying a lot of the trends are going to continue where they have been, basically.
Yes, I think so. I think the digital economy is our future, right? And it's not just for the remote workers, the tech workers who work online and who have been able to work remotely from home, right? If you're a grocery store clerk today, you're applying for your job online, right? Our digital economy is based on the data that these companies collect from the people who are online. And if an estimated 14% of urban households are not digitally connected in the United States, we're leaving out a huge portion of the workforce from this future digital economy. So as the representative said before our panel, it is absolutely important that we be investing in connecting more households in our cities to high-speed internet so that they can not only work for these companies, but participate in this digital economy in all of the ways that we do every day.
You know, we started today's forum with a Republican legislator, Representative Brooks, who made exactly that same point. Democrats, Republicans, I just don't know why it's so hard. But going back to Mayor Adler and Mayor Whaley, you know, Steve, when I interviewed you last, I think we talked a little bit about how we needed to disrupt education and training, and how we needed to create more nimble credentialing. We needed to bring in people who'd not been part of it and not look at it as sort of a one and done process. That had to go with kind of, you know, the evolution of a city, creating a smart city and creating healthier environments. I'd love to hear from both of you about we often talk about technology hitting workers, but you know, you got to give people refreshes somewhere of the way. And I just don't know what our infrastructure as a nation, whether it's where it should be in that. And Steve, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but where's your thinking now on that front?
You know, it's the same place. If anything, you know, the importance and the need is ever more apparent now. The time of everyone getting a 4-year degree is not here, but there are so many middle skill jobs that require a 2-year degree or really require a 4-month certificate. It is really hard for people to retrain themselves. It's more than just a refresh sometimes. Sometimes it's a new start. But we need to have an infrastructure that enables people to be able to do that. We need the child care infrastructure in place. We need the support that governments can provide. And then it's still a question of being nimble. You know, if you're trying to develop your workforce solution over the jobs that you need today, you're too late. You really need to be integrated with the industries in your city and the opportunities so that you are training for the opportunities that are going to exist in 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. But the more that we get into the comment earlier, everything is technology now. There is such a huge component of that. Austin is a tech city. And we have tons of coders here and pretty sophisticated folks. But I'll tell you, the greatest need we have for tech in our city are mid-skill tech work. It's not the 4-year degree. It's not even the 2-year degree. And giving people the opportunity to be able to train for those positions is key. You know, we just got the Tesla factory that came to Austin. That is a tech facility. It is not automobile manufacturing the way that, you know, you used to think about it even 10 years ago. And so much is like that. So it is still being nimble, and it's leaning into the way that technology now is everywhere. And if this epidemic and pandemic has taught us anything, it's that the disparities in our community are pronounced and real and significant, and our community will not be able to move forward unless we all move forward together. We've seen that now in ways that are impossible to ignore for those folks that didn't want to see it before.
Mayor Whaley, I'd ask you the same thing about, you know, how credentialing works, and I just want to say it with light that I know that your city is investing in, you know, creating new platforms. I'm particularly interested in, you know, the factory that Wilbur and Orville Wright had and how you're trying to transition that. You know, sort of the, you know, the broad ecosystem. It's one thing to have this kind of glittering place on the hill of great, you know, new high-tech startups, but you've got to have the ecosystem around it. So what are the pieces of that puzzle that you're putting forward?
Well, I think exactly what Mayor Adler said, particularly around this workforce issue, and really the whole country needing to redefine how they think of higher ed and this lifelong learning idea is really, really important because we're not going to be able to really compete if we don't have that nimbleness and flexibility. I think, for us, Sinclair Community College, which is one of the best community colleges and really, does this great work of nimbleness for our workforce, is really key in this conversation, because we'll need to constantly change, and we're seeing that constantly change to get the skills we need. And I'll just give one example that I've seen in the pandemic that really shows how every job is a tech job. And I have seen it with teachers that have been teachers for 20 years in our school systems, and then having to learn these enormous platforms to connect to their students during COVID. And it is incredibly stressful. And frankly, we don't have the infrastructure to do that education in the middle of a career. And that's the kind of stuff that we're going to have to create as we're starting to think of different ways that we do work. And certainly we've talked about the different ways we do work over the past few years, but nothing like this year has shown it. As Mayor Adler said, with the number of ways that we're connecting, the number of ways we're getting stuff done, but we are putting it all on the individual, and there is just no way that is sustainable.
I'm fascinated by these cities, and all the innovations going on there. And I'm also sensitive, to what Molly was saying, that, you got, these superstar cities, but there's a lot of innovation, going on in other superstar places. But Molly, you used to be at Airbnb, that my files tell me, which is super cool. I'm a big customer. But I was at a dinner once that I helped moderate in the Bay Area. And the topic was, it's not too morbid, but the end of death, like how innovators, largely in the West Coast, were going to end death. And there were a couple of people there that were DC types that says, that's going to really wreck Social Security and Medicare. And so it kind of, caught a snapshot, essentially, of the tension between innovation and this city. And as we listen to Mayor Whaley, as we listen to Mayor Adler, you know a little bit about, that intersection between innovation and innovating for the future, and regulating in smart ways. Because regulations are usually, not always, sometimes they're rent-seeking by industries, but they're usually about protecting people, helping people, dealing with market failures out there. And I'd love to get your insights as an academic that thinks about this. What are some of the parts of following a North Star in this? As we think about the future of work, we think about the future of the economy, how can this town get it better?
I'm happy you asked that. That's one of the major lessons that I teach my students every semester. In fact, I'm heading to class just after this panel, which is that these tech startups are not going to solve all of our problems, right? At the end of the day, we need our democracy and public policy and government to address the biggest issues, because that's what's going to solve these problems. And I think you can just look at one sector of the workforce that is one of the fastest growing sectors of the workforce today to see an example of this. We just did a podcast episode on this actually a couple weeks ago. Domestic workers, home care workers, house cleaners, and nannies. Those jobs are not going to be done remotely. They cannot be automated. And yet they are one of the fastest growing sectors of the workforce. And there have been a plethora of startups invented to try and help, make booking house cleaners and nannies easier and faster and getting them paid. And what has that done? That has not improved the quality of that work for those workers. At the end of the day, what we need for workers like that is a better social safety net, worker protections, minimum wage, or at least a living wage, right? The tech startups can't solve that problem. At the end of the day, we need our state governments and our federal government to actually identify those jobs as jobs that don't need to be reskilled to become tech jobs, but need to be good jobs through public policy and protections.
Well, thank you. Well, just in closing to our mayors, another conversation I had previously with Steve Adler in Austin, we had the head, I think, of the LEED associations, of the LEED certification for buildings, but they were beginning to look at how do you certify a community as a healthier community that involves transportation and certain quality of life issues. Is it intergenerational? And Austin was one of these that was looking at this LEED healthy community certification, and part of its redevelopment areas was fascinating. I don't know if you remember that, Steve, but it was a really cool discussion. Today, earlier, we had a gentleman on talking about Fulton East, a new piece of corporate real estate in Chicago that has health built into it, that has antimicrobial walls and paint, that has thermal buttons. I mean, it was basically conceived to create a health standard and a wellness standard, when it comes to certifying things. But I began thinking about, do we need to rethink about what community health means, and do we need new norms? So I know it's a big meta topic, but since Austin and Dayton are out there, plotting new ground, do we need to reconfigure some of the ways in which we think about wellness and healthy communities? Steve?
Yeah, absolutely, and for lots of reasons. One is just in absolute terms. The healthier we are, the happier we are, the more productive we are. And I think that cities establish those norms, and you can establish a health view to virtually everything that you do. People are pushing right now on making sure that equity is embedded in everything that happens. You can do the same thing, and it's important on health. And the other reason I think that it's really important to be able to do that, and why I think cities are going to be increasingly moving in that direction and finding that component in everything they do, goes to what Professor Turner was addressing a second ago, which is as cities compete for the workforce that they want to have, we get to enjoy a lot of wonderful companies in Austin, but the reason those companies are here is because the employees that they want to hire want to live in Austin, Texas. And those employees want to live here in part because those things are the priority. They want to be here because it is environmentally conscious, because it is healthy, because of the quality of life. And I think you see a lot of people turning to that in this pandemic right now, where people are really reassessing where it is that they want to be and where they want to raise their families. And I think it's going to create a moment among municipalities where there's a new way to compete. And I think that being the healthy cities, the healthy places, is going to give cities a real leg up.
Mayor Whaley?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I typically don't ever disagree with Mayor Adler. But I think, too, as we are looking at anything, I mean, really, in my 7th year as mayor, we've started really to look everything through a public health or a health lens. And it's easy to do, obviously, during COVID. But, gun violence is a public health issue. Racism is a public health issue. We find all of these indicators affecting the quality and quantity of life of people in our community. And so when we start thinking that way, it allows us to really start thinking about what we're about as a community and what kind of community we want to build for each individual in that community. And I think that Mayor Adler's right. I think it is going to change the conversation about what kind of cities we're creating. And it's not something that will happen overnight. I think, again, a lot of these issues around climate migration are going to happen because around quality health issues, we're going to see this over and over again in all different places. So I think that's exactly right. And really, as I've continued to delve into public policy, really it's most helpful if we look through everything through a public health lens.
Well, that's great. Molly, I'm going to sneak in one last question here really fast. In the old Harvard Business School, Michael Porter reviews of high-tech clusters that were, very successful, he basically said, if you have a community that accepts everything, if you have unbelievable levels of embrace of diversity, if you, and at that time, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, it was attitudes about the LGBT community or something, along those lines as a measure of your sense of diversity. We live in such a time of racial strife, just to go to what Mayor Whaley just said, of disregard for those who are less well off, in my view. I mean, I think the atmosphere out there is toxic right now in many ways. But what does that say, to go back to your original issue about clusters of talent? Does talent generally flow towards those places where diversity is not only tolerated but celebrated, robustly? I mean, is that what Michael Porter talk about matter to some of? Can that be a guide to some of the places in the country that haven't figured out how to be as inclusive as they might?
Absolutely. I think that both of the mayors are correct, that in this day and age where global talent is mobile, right, and increasingly with more remote work, if you can work from anywhere, people are choosing to live in places where there's a high quality of life, where they feel like they're welcome, where they can afford to live there, and where they feel like they can be a part of a community. And so what that means is cities should really be investing in the same things that they should have been investing in all along, right? How affordable housing, access to great public transit, access to high-speed internet. Talking about our racist history in this country, the digital divide is akin to redlining, right?
Yes.
In the 90s, the telecom companies did not invest in upgrading the infrastructure in low-income Black and brown communities because they weren't required to, and that has left those communities behind. We need to reinvest in those communities so that they have the exact same opportunities as other neighborhoods and other cities do. And until we do that, those communities are not going to be able to participate in the future of the digital economy. So that should absolutely be priority number one. And like I said earlier, once those communities are online, who knows what kinds of startups they might build and entrepreneurship they might create, right? We haven't seen that because we haven't given them the chance to do that.
Right. Well, I want to
Preach,
thank all.
Molly. Preach. Absolutely.
Yes, I think it's such an important message, and thank you to all of you. It's great to see all of you. I can't wait till I can get to Dayton and Austin and back to Berkeley. Thank you all so much. Steve Adler, Mayor of Austin, Texas, the great Austin, Texas. Nan Whaley, Mayor of Dayton, Ohio. Molly Turner of the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley, and the host of the Technopolis broadcast. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.